Welcome back, everybody, to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we have done a lot of hockey talk so far. We have talked about the Game 7 in the first segment, where the Oilers were able to hold off a tough comeback effort by the Vancouver Canucks to move on to the Western Conference Finals in dramatic fashion. And we did predictions for both the Western and Eastern Conference Finals. The Western Conference Finals, I had the Stars in 6, and the Eastern Conference Finals, I had the Rangers in 7. Let me know what you think of all of that. But in this segment here, we're moving off of the ice, and we are moving back to the NCAA. The NCAA has a lot going on, and I am just dipping my toes into the water here. We are going to do a lot more NCAA coverage. I've been kind of distracted by the playoffs for the NBA and the NHL, so I apologize for not bringing you all that NCAA coverage, but we are going to do some NCAA coverage here today, and why not start with the biggest story? We're going to go over the potential settlement, $2.7 billion between the NCAA and former players in the House versus NCAA case. I'll explain all the details to you and what some schools are saying they're having issues with. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have a burning question about sports, anything, go ahead and give me that question in a donation here on GSMCpodcast.net or in a comment. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you for sticking around, talking some sports with me on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we're going to get into this NCAA action here, NCAA settlement. And this is a big one, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background in case you don't know what's been going on, and then we're going to get into the potential fallout and everything that's been going on surrounding this case. So this goes back to NIL, and players are suing, or a group of former players are suing to saying, hey, I think I deserve money because we weren't allowed to get money, and now they're getting money through NIL. Is basically what this case boils down to in a lot of legal words and more complex sentences. But that's the idea behind this case. And the NCAA looks like it's trying to settle here in this case. And all the way it works is the NCAA has to agree. The 5 power conferences have to agree, and that includes the Pac-12, all 12 Pac-12 teams, because they were named as a co-defendant in this lawsuit. So that's what's going on. And it looks like they're settling. Settlement has gone out. Sorry. It says $2.7 billion is what the payout's going to be. And we are going to split it up amongst all 32 conferences. That includes 22 conferences that do not have football teams. Basketball conferences, the Big East, the WCC, schools like UConn and Gonzaga that aren't big football schools, are big basketball programs, are going to be affected by this. And it's ruffling a lot of feathers, especially in the non-Power 5 conferences. I talk about this a lot. As an alumni of a group of 5 school, as of James Madison University, I like to give a little bit of a perspective of the smaller schools, and it's fine to get the perspective from the bigger schools, but they're the ones with the voice here. The teams that are named in this lawsuit are the NCAA and the 5 power conferences. But the way that the NCAA said they were going to do the revenue split is 60% from the non-Power 5 conferences. And maybe on the surface that sounds like, oh, okay, that's fair. 5 conferences paying 40%, 22 paying 60%. But you have to remember that when they did the same kind of negotiations for college football and college basketball payouts for TV contracts and stuff, we're looking at the Power 5 and specifically the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, the Pac-12, all these teams, they're getting 30% on their own. They're each getting 30%, so that totals 60% of the revenue going to them. and the rest of it going to wherever, going to the group of five, the group of six, whatever, every other conference. If you look at it this way, you're getting 30% of the money, and you're paying 40% of it. It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. It's one of these things that I understand there's a disparity in the NCAA between these Power 5 conferences. They're the ones that bring in money. They're the ones that are on the national media attention. You're not going to you're not turning on ESPN to watch MAC basketball. Right? You're not turning on ESPN on a random Saturday night to watch the Sunbelt games, right? You're not doing that. And there are people that are doing that. I'm going to do that because it's my job and I enjoy watching sports. I'll turn on any sport there is that's on. That's why I do this. But that's not the national audience. They're there to watch the big brands. They're there to watch LSU. They're there to watch Georgia. They're there to watch Alabama. SEC football, Ohio State, Michigan, Big Ten football. You know, these ACC basketball, Duke, North Carolina. That's what they're here to tune in for, and that's what's going to make the most money, right? And I respect that. I understand that. These are the two teams that are bringing in money. These are the teams with the budget to pay for players. And reading articles on ESPN, preparing for this, there was a quote from one of the 22 schools, from one of the ADs of a school in one of the 22 conferences that don't have football, called the CC 22, or the CCA 22. And he was saying, hey, why do I have to pay $10 million for Zion Williamson? He was never going to come here. We don't have the budget for this. And this isn't just coming out of football, right? This isn't just a football thing. The money that is coming out of this is coming out of the basketball fund, the bonuses that you get for winning and making it to the NCAA championship, the stuff that can fund these smaller conferences for literal years, decades at some point. UMBC, when they beat Virginia, they were able to fund their conference with just that bonus money from UMBC for 10 years, or for 5-6 years. They're just now finishing the funding money. It's hard to fathom how big of a deal it is for these smaller conferences to get these bonuses, to get this. It really helps expand their athletic facilities. It helps expand their national footprint, make their university bigger. Sports is a huge, huge catalyst for education around the US especially. It's one of the magical things. It's one of those things about the NCAA basketball tournament that's so awesome about March Madness, because teams like UMBC, their application rate, it went up by like 200% the year after they beat 1 seed Virginia. Attention, you hadn't heard. I bet you 95% of you had not heard of the UMBC Golden Retrievers before they won. And this happens a lot in sports. That's just one of the more prominent examples. Your smaller school goes on a run, and then it gets national popularity and people want to come. It gets more funding. It can expand its education, its academic programs. And right now what the NCAA is doing is punishing these teams. These teams don't even have a seat at the table. Right? And I understand. You can't just take it all from the top 5 conferences. I completely understand that it's an NCAA as a whole, and everyone needs to at least pay a little bit. But there should be a better way to break it up than say, hey, cripple this small conference's budget. There are conferences that are really going to struggle. They're going to have to make cuts. They were saying, do I have to fire 2 people to pay for Zion Williamson? Do I have to fire 2 staff members so that the NCAA can pay? That doesn't seem right. Right? There has to be a better way to do it, and it seems like this proposal is going to go through. The Big 12, about an hour or 2 ago at this point, already voted to pass this proposal. And all that it needs to pass is the NCAA saying yes and all 5 power conferences saying yes. And if you're a power conference, it seems like they're going to say yes. It seems like it's going to go through, and this is really going to hurt the rest of the NCAA. It really is. And it's a shame because there always was this power disparity. They're called the Power Five, for God's sake, And it's unfair. I understand. I do. I understand that the group of five and these other conferences, they can't just sit back and pay nothing. They need to have some kind of revenue split. And they're not saying we don't want to pay anything. They're just saying let us pay, less than 60%. Make the power conferences pay more. They have the budget. If you go by budget size, some of these schools probably, you pool all of the Power 5 together, they could probably afford the 2.7 billion on their own. Now, they're not going to ask the Power 5 to do it on their own, but I think they should take at least more than 50. They should take more than 50% at a minimum. Or at a minimum 50% of it. Because they are the people that are being sued. The rest of the NCAA is not being named in this lawsuit specifically. It's just the Power 5 conferences. And being part of the lawsuit, being named in the lawsuit, should carry more than 40% of the weight. I truly do believe that. And it's a shame. We'll cover more of this if it actually goes through. We'll talk about how it's going to affect some of these smaller schools more and what the outcome is. There's other lawsuits that are still pending, that are lawyers are trying to consolidate it into one. The NCAA is adding a clause in this that says, hey, you can't sue us anymore about this if we agree to this, which is kind of crazy and also shady, and I don't think should be allowed to happen. I don't think you should be able to legally say, hey, if we give you money, you're not allowed to sue us anymore, ever. Ever. It's dumb. That feels like it shouldn't be allowed, but it looks like it's going to go through, and I have a lot of problems with this. But we are running out of time here, unfortunately, so we'll cover more of this later on when it is official. I'll give more thoughts on it, but in our next segment, we are going to move into the NFL. We're going to close off our show talking about some NFL news. OTAs are underway for a lot of teams, and there's some contract situations that are getting a little interesting. So we're going to talk about that. T. Higgins, Justin Jefferson, Trevor Lawrence, and more coming up next on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.